I'm here with Mathea Ford, and she is no stranger to talking about nutrition, except she's usually talking to healthcare professionals. But today she's going to tell us normal people how we can use meal planning in a way that is not as daunting as it seems for us. We tend to think, oh, meal planning, come on, I don't have any room for anything else. But I promise we're going to come away from this and it's not going to be as scary. She's going to change your outlook because Mathea is going to tell us how it can be done easier and faster. And she's also going to help us with how you can come up with recipes, how you can find them, how you can then manage your time around the whole deal here of the finding recipes, the cooking, the planning, etc. And everything about today is going to show you how meal planning actually can work, even if you're pretty darn busy. So that's enough from me. Mathea, tell us, how do we even start with learning about nutrition as regular people if even the professionals need help?
Well, yes, I host a nutrition experts podcast, and we talk about lots of different things related to nutrition. And meal planning is one of the things that kind of comes up over and over because it is a struggle. Yes. Nobody has extra time. Nobody's June Cleaver staying at home and just cooking and, that type of thing. So, and I think that's why we have a little bit more convenience products, but it's also we've gotten away from planning and therefore we eat unhealthier options.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. I mean, I am going to be 100% honest with you all because I always am. I just ordered in for lunch because it's gross outside and I didn't feel like going anywhere and I had not planned correctly to eat, real people food. Oops. See, that's why we need you in our lives today, because even a summit lady like me orders in sometimes. So how do you help people understand the importance of meal planning? Because it's one of those things that tends to go by the wayside after 1 week of trying to be Pinterest perfect.
Well, I think that's where people go wrong, is they try to be Pinterest perfect. So your question was, how do you get started with meal planning?
Yeah, how do we get convinced, first of all, that it's worth our time? Because we've all tried it before. I think everyone on here has tried it before in like a fit of online inspiration. And then they're just like, oh, no way, this stinks.
So, everybody bought an Instapot and was like, oh, yeah, I'm going to meal plan. And then, no, it's sitting on the counter getting dust. Okay.
Exactly. Use it once.
It is super important regardless of, like, I speak a lot to people who have kidney disease, and it's super important for that. But it's just a basic skill. I was talking to somebody about this the other day. It's a basic skill that we have let go is meal planning and cooking. Mm-hmm. And so meal planning is so important because it can save you money. It can manage your time a little better. It can help you stay healthy. So whether you're trying to lose weight or not, meal planning can help with that. And meal planning does not mean that you don't ever eat out. It just means that you eat out because you meant to eat out. It doesn't mean that and honestly, I've been doing that a lot this summer too. Like Uber Eats and Postmates, and my favorite place that I like to go to now has DoorDash. So I'm like, oh, I'm in
trouble. The best.
Yeah. So, and they're not, they're expensive, but it's not super bad. But it is a matter of, I think for a lot of people, they think it takes a lot of time. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's some key things that you can do to help reduce the amount of time. I'm not going to tell you it's never going to take any time, but there's a few options you can use to reduce that amount of time.
So that's, I think, one of the ideas that we get stuck in our heads. I'm not going to say it's a myth because it can be very true. But one of the ideas that gets stuck in our heads is that meal planning takes time. It takes way more time than it does to just say, screw it, I'm going to go pick up prepared food or call Uber Eats up. I'm going to punch in something in an app and then it's done. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it does take time, but it's not as much as we think. So I'd love to hear some of your thoughts around how this works for people who are busy and how it might save us time, because you said that and my ears perked up.
Well, okay. So one of the things I think that is a misconception of people is that you have to have new things all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So you're always searching on Pinterest, you're looking for new recipes, you're wanting to be perfect. When the reality is that probably you have about 10 meals. And if you're like me, I have a 13 or a 12 and a 14-year-old. My daughter's going to be 13 shortly, so I think of her as 13. But and they really want to stick to just a couple meals.
Yeah.
So keep them outside of their comfort zone. So one of the big ahas that I had is that when I worked in hospitals and managed kitchens, we had a 21 or a 22 or a 28-day meal cycle. And that is the way that they order food. It's how they process recipes. And so if you pick your top, say, 14 recipes and you put them down and you kind of have a schedule. So if you know that Mondays is Taekwondo and Wednesdays is Taekwondo and Tuesday is dance. And so you can plan out either doing a crock pot meal that night. You can plan to eat out. That's fine.
Yeah.
But you have this 2-week cycle. So maybe you get paid every 2 weeks and you can buy, like your meat and your veggies and stuff on those days. And then fresh fruits and fresh vegetables in between. But quit thinking that you have to have a new meal plan every week. Stop. Spend a couple hours, lay out your schedule for the next, like we're getting ready to go back to school. So I know my daughter's going to start dance. We're going to have guitar lessons. We're going to have Taekwondo. I know which nights those are. So I can then plan ahead and say, okay, and my kids will be perfectly happy to know that they're having spaghetti on Tuesday night every other week. They really don't care. And I'm not trying to impress anybody. Now, obviously, when you have meals or groups or family or whatever, that's a different story.
Right.
But I want you to quit thinking that you have to change it all the time. So that can help you a lot because you're not meal planning every week then. You're only ordering your food every week.
Right.
And then maybe before you start your meal plan, you might go through, we did this before we went on vacation. We went through and said, what do we have in the freezer? What do we have in the refrigerator that we don't, we've just kind of accumulated. Like you buy 6 chicken breasts in the pack and when there's only 4 of us, so you freeze 2. And then you do that over and over and suddenly you got a fridge full of chicken.
Right.
So then we went through and said, okay, we have a ton of chicken. What do we want to make? Because we wanted to get rid of it before, going out of town. Or we have a full loaf of bread and we're going out of town in a week. Let's use up the bread type thing. So stop that perfection. Because your mom probably didn't do that either. She just probably didn't ever mention to you that she was repeating. No. And then if you go, so some things you can also do is if you're trying new foods. So if you normally have broccoli or carrots or whatever, you can switch up the veggies, but your main entree is the same. So if you know Monday night's a crock pot night, you can make that crock pot stuff and just put a few different veggies in it.
Yeah. Well, that keeps it exciting without it being crazy because those different veggies could also be something you dump out of a freezer bag. They don't have to be farmer's market fresh. That's, maybe they are. That's cool. But that's probably not going to be so after October when the farmer's market closes.
Or you mentioned finding new recipes. So don't just think about the basics of a recipe. So you could have a salad and then you have just the lettuce and start putting together things on your salad that you're going to like. So maybe you go to the farmer's market every Saturday, you pick up some strawberries, some pears, whatever, and you mix it together with goat cheese or whatever sounds good.
Does sound good.
So you can make that salad a little bit of variety, but still you plan on having salad that night.
Yeah.
And if you know you're shopping on Saturday, plan your salads earlier in the week because obviously your vegetables and fruits that are fresh go bad. And then plan maybe your frozen or other types of meals for the longer further out.
It sounds like it might take a little trial and error to find out how much you use during the week and what do you come up with as extra? Like you're saying, when you get 6 chicken breasts to a packet, you have 4 people. There's always going to be 2 left over. I mean, when we have chicken in our house, my husband meal plans or attempts to meal plan for work. And that's 5 days. So there's always this one chicken breast hanging around afterwards, after his planning for those 5 days at work. And you're right. Once you take a look at what's accumulated, you can start to just kind of, throw some stuff together that might not be gourmet, but that's what soups and stir fries are for, right?
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to say is if so another basic is soup.
Yeah.
Soup is not complicated. You put broth in the crock pot, you put some veggies that you like, and you cook some meat on the stove, till it's done, and chop it up and stick it in there, and you have soup. So there's bean soup has just a bunch of beans in it. And maybe a little ham if you're like me.
Right. Exactly.
But you don't have to have a can. Even chicken noodle soup. So you can put in the broth, you put in the carrots, you put in the chicken and whatever else. And then maybe 30 minutes before you're ready to serve it. So you get home, you throw into the crock pot those noodles and they'll absorb, but they won't you don't want to put them in the morning because they're going to get mushy. Yeah. Same thing with veggies. So if it's a hard to cook veggie, like carrots, it's a little harder, green beans, that type of stuff. But if you want to put a little zucchini or squash in there, you put it in there maybe 30 minutes before you're ready to eat, and it doesn't become mush.
That's so smart. See, I'm not a successful meal planner. I will admit that, because we're all about being real in this summit. I am a meal plan failure because I get super excited. I get all these recipes, go grocery shopping, and most things go rotten. And because I'll make something and then I'm like, oh, it's all mushy by the time I eat it. So I like that idea.
Well, for me also, my kids have strong opinions and I really want them to eat food that I put on the table. I'm not looking to be a short order cook.
Right.
And so we agree, what is on the meal plan and make sure that there's something in that meal that they will eat. And we have what one of my guests referred to as no thank you bites. So if you don't want to try the broccoli, then you can't just not eat it. You have to take a bite and then that's good. But
I like
it's just getting them to try.
Bite. That's really good. A no thank you bite. Because then at least you've tried it, because you never know. I mean, there's some things you think you don't like, and even as you get older, your tastes change. Especially as they're teens, they're changing every day.
My daughter would eat French fries with ranch every meal if I let her. So I know.
And now as an old person, I'm like, ugh, gross. But I would have too. I really like this idea of you only have a few meals that you're really rotating. Because if I think back to growing up, I mean, my mom does not like to cook. She can cook because, she was an 80s mom and they cooked. But she had like 7 meals maybe that we rotated, and we all just kind of liked them. I mean, my family and I sat down. We didn't much question anything because we already knew we liked them. She'd switch out vegetables, and she did exactly what you're saying. And, looking back on that, what you're saying isn't hard. It's just think to your childhood about how it wasn't an issue and nobody argued over dinner.
Well, if you want to try new stuff, if you're a big Pinterest person, you're like, oh, that looks really good. Throw that in on a day when you have time to come home and cook, or a weekend. But also, if you have a family, you might prepare them like, hey, we're going to have a new thing Saturday. I'm going to try it. And, that way you're not home rushing, trying to get that all done. The other best part about having a meal plan, which saves you time as the mom or the dad or whoever's responsible, is if you have kids old enough and you have a plan, they can start cooking.
That's true.
They know mom's going to be home at 5:30. Okay, I text them. Let's be real. I text them and say, hey, start the, whatever, or put the noodles in the crock pot. And they are then learning that skill of cooking, feeling comfortable in the kitchen, and they're saving you time. They're invested in that meal, and that makes a huge difference into how much they eat. So,
Yeah.
you can be a little healthier.
That's a great tip. Thinking about starting to get them moving on this healthy behaviors, getting used to the kitchen. What age did you start your kids with helping out in the kitchen?
Well, I'm kind of a control freak a little bit about the kitchen, so it's hard. So I would say maybe about 10. And
that's great.
We have a gas stove, so they didn't necessarily do the gas stove, but they could microwave things or, get their own food, cereal, make their bowl of cereal, that type of thing. So, and now my son gets up in the middle of the night because he's growing. He's 14 and he's just hungry all the time. And he'll get up in the middle of the night and make himself eggs. And I'm like, please do not get up in the middle of the night and cook because you just make me nervous.
Oh, but jeez, and they make a mess. If he's like my husband, who is a grown 14-year-old, pretty much, it probably makes a mess across the whole kitchen.
He leaves the pan. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. So I would say, you know what's appropriate for your kids, and it can start with them doing some of the prep work. So if okay, we're going to have a soup or something, and you're cooking ahead, or you're cutting ahead, you do all that prep work ahead of time. I used to, the night before, I will put the bags of vegetables that I've already cut up into the crock pot bowl, and I'll put that in the fridge. And then in the morning, I take out the crock, put it in the crock pot, and pour everything in there. So it's as long as I remember to put that in the crock pot before I leave. And if I don't, maybe one of the kids is still at the house, and they can take it out, pour it in there, and start the crock pot. So
you're good. That's impressive. Now, we mostly talk about meal planning dinners. Do you ever meal plan like lunches or even breakfasts or snacks? Do you ever do that?
I don't usually, except for the weekends. We do plan like breakfast, lunch, and dinner on the weekend usually. But I don't necessarily, I tend to take a frozen meal or a salad to work. So I just usually do that, but it's going to be the same thing because you're going to, and that's one thing you can do is if okay, I'm making soup on Monday night, I want to take soup to work Tuesday. Yeah. And just plan that and put it in the little container when you're done, and then it's ready for you for the next morning. So those types of things can help you to do better. You can do the overnight oats in the fridge where you put the milk and the oatmeal in a cup and let it sit overnight, and then in the morning it's ready to eat with little fruit.
Yeah. The whole theme of what you're saying here is essentially don't make it hard. Like that's I'm coming away thinking, okay, why am I not doing this? That's not hard to have some basic meals you do. You switch things up. You do a little prep ahead of time just so that you know where you're going with it. You don't have to, make it beautiful. I have a friend who she's been perfect since I met her in college. And she's one of those where everything is beautifully cut, and fancy. And she's even been featured with different companies for her whole blog about fancy lunch boxes. And I see that and I'm just like, I can't be you. I can never be you. But why try to do that? Why make it hard? There's only one her.
Right.
And it's not me either.
And like I said, I'm not trying to win any competition. I'm just trying to get my kids fed and
survive.
I mean, some days it really is that way, but I think that's the key thing to doing this is looking at, like, if you have some favorite recipes or things that you try, look at the basic components of that recipe and see if you can switch out the meat.
Right.
I actually tried I did these turkey breasts with some of my, I have a spice company and I do some toasted onion spice, and so cool. I put some of that in there, and then I did a little balsamic reduction, and I was like, this is almost better than soy sauce. Like, balsamic reduction is just really putting balsamic vinegar in a pan and cooking it and letting it boil till some of the water goes away.
Even I can do that.
It's like a little sauce you can put on chicken, turkey, anything. Yeah. And so just paying attention to some of those things that you really like, either at a restaurant or other people cooking, and you could say, hey, how'd you make that? How'd you make your chicken parm?
Yeah.
I saw something in a book the other day, and they talked about using like egg roll wrappers instead of puff pastry to make some little raviolis. They would put the little raviolis in there and then fold them over, and just quick and easy instead of having to make dough and everything like that. So just start looking at your recipes, look at the commonalities.
Yeah.
Obviously with spaghetti, you have meat sauce, you have an Alfredo sauce, you can do pesto, you can add vegetables, you can add meats,
Yeah.
And as long as people like the basics, they usually are willing to try a little bit different.
Well, I think if we take it down to your creativity and any jazzing it up happens in the small parts. You already have 90% of this taken care of with your pasta, your chicken breast, your whatever it is, that's your basic. And, jazzing things up a little bit, even people who aren't much for cooking like me can do that. Or you can come up with a different spice, like go to an actual spice place, not just the grocery store aisle, because you'll be over it real quickly. But, an actual like crafted spice place or online and find something different, or, look up a new dressing. And that is much less intimidating when I already know the basics. So you already like that one thing. Your picky teenagers already like this one thing. So if you change like a slight amount of it, that's really not as intimidating. I like that.
Yeah.
Now, where do you find your recipes that are not overly complicated? Because Pinterest is awesome, but I think I've made like 3 things from there that have turned out.
So, I love to cook, but one of my favorite places is my grandmother had this, and I've used it. It's a Betty Crocker cookbook. It's got the red and white check.
The checked cookbook. Yes, my mom used it.
Yes, and it's got almost any kind of food you want in there. Yeah. And I have 100 cookbooks. I mean, who doesn't have that many? Right. But I go back to that one over and over, especially if I know, I'm like, oh, I want to make meatloaf. What do I put in it again? And so I love it for that. And there's the, I'm trying to remember what the name of it is, but the test kitchen or whatever, where they make some really complicated things. And that's a great aspirational goal. But I'm reminded a little bit when I grew up, my grandmother taught me how to sew. And that's also a lost art.
Yes.
And we would read the pattern, but then she would also say to me, Mathea, a shirt is put together the same way every time. Like, you sew the shoulders, and then you sew the sleeves in, and then you sew down the arm and down the sleeve, and then you put the collar in, So she's like, yes, you cut the pattern a little different, or it might have a dart or a princess seam or something, but the basics are the basics. You're never going to put the sleeve in before you sew the shoulders together. So that Betty Crocker cookbook is great for saying, okay, meatloaf is always going to need some egg, a little bit of milk, something to hold it together. And then you can add vegetables. You can add some spices. I love the idea of going to the farmer's market and talking. That's what I love about farmer's market. You talk to the farmer and you say, what's a great recipe that this is good in, or what do you like to cook it in, and get some different ideas. And they can, give you some different ideas about slicing or dicing or maybe boiling or steaming. But in that cookbook, it talks about the different kind of meats and like how you should cook them. So steaks you cook on the grill, but a pot roast you don't cook on the grill because it needs to be cooked in moist heat. So those are some of the things that you can learn in there, but I love that for that.
Yeah. If you don't own, ladies, seriously, if you do not own the Betty Crocker checked cookbook, it is what your mom used, what your grandma used, what you think of as good cooking. When my husband and I got married, we went over to my parents' house and he was just like, man, my mom's whatever we're eating tastes just like this. And it is like the old standby for food that just tastes good. And it gives, like Mathea was saying, gives you instruction on how to cook certain meats and techniques. So if you own one cookbook, even if you're like, I don't cook, you need the Betty Crocker checked cookbook. It's amazing. And I'll put a
Everything
link
from
to it.
cookies and desserts
Yes.
to meats and all different kinds of meats. It's just got a little bit of
Yes.
everything.
And there's a link to it that I'll put into the show
Great
notes
idea.
here. So because you need it in your life, seriously. Even an old copy is just as good.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Nothing changed too much about
No.
cooking except for a little bit of convection, but
That's about it. And not all of us are even lucky enough to have a convection oven. So if you're an apartment dweller, yeah, you're like, oh, what?
Yeah.
So where else do you like to find your recipes that are, those standbys that are popular in your house?
So I like it when we go out to restaurants or we go on vacation. We eat out almost every night on vacation, and we'll come back and we'll say, or we'll be eating and we're like, we've got to remember this. So of course we're there taking pictures of it.
Yeah.
So we like to do that. I just really love, honestly, we're really plain right now because my kids just will not eat a whole lot of things that are very complicated. Yeah. We did, when it's just my husband and I, maybe I'll try some, different things. And so I do go to Pinterest sometimes and say, but I always start with like, what do I want as the center of the plate? Yeah. So do I want a fillet or do I want a chicken breast? And I'll look for chicken breast and I'll say, I kind of really feel sweet or salty or tart or whatever, and kind of filter through like that. And then look for something, and a lot of times I'll modify it, but I tend to really do try to plan. And I don't know if most places have either like shipped or Walmart does delivery in my area. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that started like a month ago. And Friday night I will put in the order, and Saturday morning they're there at 8:00 in the morning with my groceries. So
Giant, one of our grocery stores does that. Like Life changed with Instacart and Giant's Peapod and everything. I didn't know Walmart did groceries too. That's pretty cool.
Yes. Well, at least in my area they do. So
it's magic.
Yeah. So I just really, I'm very good about like, what do I feel in the mood for? Yeah. And, but that always just happens on Saturday or Sunday usually, because the rest of the week I don't have time to think about it. Because who doesn't hate it when your significant other or spouse calls you up and says, what's for dinner? Because you're like, oh, I was supposed to figure that out?
You're like, I don't know. I was at work too. What's for dinner then?
So that is the best thing, because then same thing, like my husband gets home before I do sometimes. He can start cooking. Anybody knows you got to start cooking at a certain time. So
exactly. So you had essentially said that this saves us money, and I think part of that might be the planning ahead and the food delivery instead of like walking through the grocery store hungry and goodness knows what you've picked up, because we've all gotten some pretty crazy stuff when we've shopped hungry. What else do you have for tips when it comes to saving money through meal planning?
So using seasonal fruits and vegetables, when you're either in the grocery store or there's places online, like I think the FDA has a site or whatever, it'll tell you what's seasonal. You can look at your farmer's market, see what's seasonal. Those are always going to be the least expensive. Strawberries are not supposed to be eaten in January. They're grown and everything, but they're $5 a case or box or whatever. So saving a little money by figuring out what is seasonal vegetables, you're saving money because you're not eating out. I mean, eating out is $10 a plate. Eating at home is $2. You can use different cuts of meat to save a little money. You can, I love to do meatless just for health reasons, but meatless also meals where you use beans or legumes to substitute in that meal. Is a perfect way to save a little money too, because they tend to be less expensive than meats. But just look for, you can always have like a set of recipes and then look in your Sunday paper or look online, coupon.com, see what kind of meats and vegetables are on sale, and then go with those recipes too. You can do a little bit of that, or substituting, like I said, with if okay, we're going to have hamburgers, for example, what side do I want with them? Yeah. You can pick that based on the seasonality. So I think being able to be flexible, be a little seasonal, and also use some frozen items is a good way to save a little money.
They taste much better than canned. Canned always tastes a little mushy to me. It kind of tastes like my nightmare of a restaurant, Golden Corral. So it always tastes a little bit like Golden Corral. No offense to the Golden Corral lovers out there, but just a little bit mushy, like old people food. Yeah. Frozen is close, especially for soups. It's a little bit closer to fresh, but it's so cheap and way more convenient. Like things like peas, stuff that you'll always need, like peas, corn, spinach, that type of stuff. I always have that. I make a lot of soup. That's one of the few things that I can do without a recipe and can just make up.
Well, and soup can be high sodium if you buy it in the can. Yes. But if you're making it with just the broth and some veggies and chicken, you can have a lower sodium thing. And eating less sodium is good for all of us, regardless of, any sort of health conditions.
Exactly. And sodium's in everything, so you're unlikely to be deficient. And so, don't worry if you start cooking everything, you're not going to suddenly be sodium deficient. Yeah. I find that I think I've successfully used a coupon maybe 20 times in my entire life. And it's always very exciting when you do. So one of the pitfalls, I think, when people start to meal plan, especially, after that extreme couponing craze when it was on TLC, and we tried to do all that stuff. We tried to be like, okay, now I'm going to plan this. Here's what's on sale with that coupon. And God, ladies, just don't. Just keep it easy. Listen to Mathea. Don't go overboard.
And there's probably an app on your phone too. Sure. I haven't done it very much. And with the grocery delivery, you really can't do coupons. So
grocery delivery is a game changer. And I think unless you're really rural, they have it just about everywhere. Instacart does the stores who don't. Yeah, I mean, Instacart does it for a lot of stores. Like here, there's Wegmans that does it. I think they do it for Safeway too. And Giant. So, your store name may vary where you are, but most are doing that now. And Amazon Fresh has a lot of stuff too. And they do sometimes have coupons on there.
Oh, yes.
Which is kind of cool. I mean, trying to make life easier, we have to learn these shortcuts. The delivery was, oh God, that and getting maids are the two things that have changed my home life beyond compare. There were no more arguments over two major tasks that had to be done in the house.
So one last thing I would say, kind of if you're like, I don't even know where to start, I don't know where to find some good recipes, there is a website and it's called eMeals, EMEALS.com.
Yeah, I'll link that.
And you know that?
I do know that. I'll link that in our notes too. I know that one.
Okay, great. Yeah, because they have a new set of dinner meals every week. And you can do a lunch plan, and you can do a breakfast plan, and you can do all different kinds of types of conditions, low carb. Not that I endorse any of that, but it's there. So that is another good resource, and you could just do it for like 3 months, and you'll have a good cache of recipes and say, okay, we like this, we like this, we like this, and this is what we're going to start doing from now on.
Yeah. Before we go, I have one more question for you, just out of curiosity from a real professional in this. How do you feel about those meal delivery things like HelloFresh, Blue Apron? They have a million of them now. Those types of things.
Yeah, I think they're starting to consolidate a little, and I saw that Chef was closing up and stuff. Oh, yeah. I like them, but I did, I'm trying to remember which one we did. HelloFresh, I think.
We did that one too.
I hated it because they gave me a whole onion and a whole piece of garlic, and I had to chop everything up and do a lot of the work. And I'm so used to having the, doing it kind of ahead of time and having it just ready to go. And then I'd open the box and take it out and just have to spend 20 minutes. And I think it just depends on your feeling.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard plated gives it to you already cut up, and you just kind of
nice.
assemble. And then we did freshly for a little while, but freshly is kind of like frozen dinners almost. So they're not frozen, but they're like little one-person meals. And so you would basically microwave those. And so I think they would be good if you were taking them to work, for example.
Cool. Yeah, it's like Jenny Craig. That's not gross.
Yeah. Yeah. But there's probably less expensive, healthy frozen dinners if that's what you're really looking for. So I think anything that gets you to eat at home a little more, make some more meals, is great. Like I said, HelloFresh, I was frustrated because they wanted me to do a lot of the work still, and I'm like, I just paid you so much for this meal. But it was a good chance to try new recipes. So if that's what you're looking for, you might do that. I think you can do them like every other week or every couple weeks. You might try that. I see them as a good way to incorporate some variety and maybe have that one variety meal a week or something. But
they're expensive, though.
They can be expensive, absolutely. So if you use them for a couple months and you get some good recipes, and then you just go back and use those recipes over and over, that's fine.
That's what we did. HelloFresh we were in this phase where we're just like, we shouldn't keep going out to eat, because where we live, we can walk everywhere, and there are a ton of restaurants we're regulars at. It's fun. We already know what we like. But we tried HelloFresh, and their food was really good. I will say that. It was delicious food. But if you are a person who you're getting this because you don't really like to cook and you're short on time, good luck. They are the most complicated recipes I've ever made. And that seems true of a lot of the boxes. But if you like to cook and you like to jazz things up, that, like you said, that one meal a week, it might be a good idea.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for your help today. This, even a hardcore eating by the seat of her pants gal like me could do meal planning. And I think that these are really helpful, pretty convincingly time-saving steps to be able to do this. And meal planning, it doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be complicated. And I like that idea of starting with what is essentially your base. What is, the middle of the plate, which I love how you said, what's the middle of the plate? And that helps when you're searching for a recipe and you're trying to plan. So thank you very much for today.
Yes, stop trying to be a perfectionist.
Yes, amen.
It's built just like exercise. You don't start out running a marathon.
No.
So if you just really want to do meal planning because that's a good thing and it's healthy and you need to, get on a plan, don't beat yourself up for walking for 10 minutes and then stopping. Walk through, plan 2 meals a week, and then start to see that build.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, the all or nothing thing is what gets us in trouble with any change we're trying to make. It's not going to happen. That's beautiful advice. Stop trying to be perfect. Thank you for being here.
No, you're welcome.